a 2015 study, 70% of educators didn't believe primary state assessments were developmentally appropriate for their students.
Wow, but what exactly are standardized tests?
In 1840, the development of several types of standardized tests began, including for the military.
During World War I, standardized testing is a standard. Army mental tests were taken by the military servicemen. By 1918, there were a total of 100 different standardized tests.
Standardized testing was expanded by college leaders and students. Eventually, it became part of mandatory state testing. In 2001, the No Child Left Behind reform expanded the use of mandatory standardized testing to assess school performance.
A law formed by Congress called the No Child Left Behind Act was signed into effect by George W. Bush on January 8, 2002. It was a federal law that was signed because it was a concern that the American education system was no longer competitive. It increased federal role in holding schools accountable for the academic progress in students.
Since then, it has been a controversy on how much testing should be required and if tests accurately determine the student's academic skills. A report from Council of Great City Schools stated that there is no correlation between mandated testing time and reading math scores on the National Assessment of Educational Progress. This means that increasing mandated test time will not improve academic performance.
Without asking anyone what the unintended consequences to children with disabilities, to children learning English, to children who were having a bad day because they had a fight with mom this morning, what that would mean to say you're only going to look at it one score on a standardized test in reading and math and nothing else matters?
The test, would you agree, is a reading test. So what if you're not a good reader, but you're really good at math and science? Your score might reflect a lower score because you didn't understand the question because your reading level wasn't to where. So there's a lot of intricacies within that test that we now have to prepare our students for to make sure they understand how the questions are going to be asked, how their answers need to be. So there's a lot that goes into it. The ACT, since it has been implemented statewide, all public schools, the state actually pays for that. Now, there is a kind of a hook to that, I guess. The state pays for the test, but we must supply all the resources and the manpower to administer the test. But now there is days and days and hours of preparation to get that test. You know, all the students in the right classrooms, all the teachers, we spend hours making sure the teachers understand and know the rules and regulations pertaining to the test so they can administer the test.
As test regulations continue to increase, there's less time for learning soft skills like communication that will be needed in the workforce.
Knowledge is power, without a doubt. But along with that knowledge, you also have to have those soft skills of being able to collaborate, troubleshoot. So there's a lot of other things that go into it. Knowledge is definitely a key component, but there's other soft skills that go into it that will also make you successful.
In a world where standardized testing isn't the norm, what would be some alternatives to high-stakes testing?
An alternative to standardized testing is stealth assessment. It collects data secretly throughout the year through an online learning software like Khan Academy. While it takes the same data, it reduces the cost, anxiety, and time of traditional tests. A more reasonable, realistic solution could be sampling. Sampling is when tests are taken by randomly selected students rather than every student.
Test sampling would work if you were truly just using it as a measure for the entire student body. Test sampling is not going to work in the purpose of when we do the Aspire and the ACT, we then look at that individual data to see where your personal weaknesses are, and we also use that individual data. Well, you're going to use that individual data to apply and get accepted into universities.
Sampling works for tests that are solely used for statistics of a group. So, sampling for tests like the ACT won't work, as the ACT is used for much more than school statistics.
That's why I think the recent passage of the Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA, a landmark piece of bipartisan legislation, hopefully will fix the outdated policies of that No Child Left Behind legislation. The new legislation, the new law we just passed, takes into consideration the collective criticisms of the teachers and the students and parents and administrators, business leaders, everyone who is involved in the education of our children.
Obama's stance on standardized testing is to limit it. He recommended that schools use no more than 2% of class time to test. He is in favor of limiting standardized testing and for the schools to invest more time learning and less time obsessing about testing.
You know, as a high school and as a district under the leadership of our superintendent, we have a firm belief that good teaching will take care of test scores. So I would say if you would look at the time that we spend on test prep compared to a lot of other districts, it would probably be a lot less. We believe our main goal is to prepare students, not to take a test, but to prepare them for their job or their career, getting them the skills they need after. A lot of it has to do with politics. You know, who's in power in politics and what is their belief as far as the federal level for education. You know, some politicians believe that we should get rid of all high stakes testing. Some politicians think that it's the best way to measure accountability.
Standardized testing is important to address in 2017 because the education system in America is suffering. Mandatory test regulations are continuing to grow, affecting how we teach and learn, sometimes due to the inaccurate results of a single test. There's been some progress to reduce the impact of standardized tests already, but there's much more to be done.